It's another episode of the Better Learning Podcast. My name's Kevin Stoller, host of the show, and I'm joined today by Erin Kane, who she is the superintendent of schools at Douglas County School District, just outside of Denver in Colorado. And Erin, come on in. I'm going to welcome you in, and then we're going to get into a bunch of different conversations. But how are you doing today?
Terrific. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Erin has a unique background in that she did not come the typical path of becoming a teacher, moving your way into administration. Why don't you start some of your story? But I first want to hear, what was school like for you when you were a student?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I think I was a pretty typical student. I was very introverted in school, and but I worked hard and I took honors and AP classes in high school. And I wouldn't say that school was a particular struggle for me necessarily, but yeah, it went just fine, I guess.
And did you grow up in Colorado?
I did. Yeah, I grew up right here, very close to where I'm now superintendent.
Okay. Okay, nice. And so your journey into education was not typical, like we talked about.
Yeah.
What did you think you were going to do as you were going through school and moving through and starting out your career?
Well, I think like many kids in high school, and I know almost all of us as adults can look back and name the teacher that inspired them to do something to become whatever it is that they became. I really wish our teachers could hear those stories now, all these years later. But for me, it was an AP calculus teacher in high school. I wasn't sure how successful I would be at calculus, and we had a brand new teacher who came out of industry, and she was amazing. And our entire class got fives on the AP calculus test. And my confidence in my mathematical abilities absolutely soared. So I decided to go into engineering. So my degrees are in computer science and applied mathematics engineering right here in Colorado from the University of Colorado. And I spent
Nice.
about a decade in the high tech industry. I absolutely loved it. I essentially did what today we would call a data scientist. So I did a lot of work with databases and data analysis and working with clients to help them make sense of their data. It was a lot of fun. I loved it.
Yeah, perfect. So what was the change? What pulled you into the education
Yeah,
side when
very unexpected turn, right? I still stand in my office as superintendent and go, what do I do for a living? How did this happen? But the truth is, when my children were young, I have three children, and when the third was born, the wheels came off at home, and my husband and I knew we had to make a change, and so I decided to leave my high tech career and stay at home with my three kids. And at that time, my oldest was going into kindergarten, and I started to look at schools in our area. We have great schools in the area. However, I was really passionate about kids being exposed to engineering at a very young age: science, technology, engineering, and math. And this is before that was even an acronym. This is
right?
way back in 2004. So I got it in my head to start a charter school. I figured, I don't know, how hard can it be? Turned out it was quite difficult, but I started a charter school when I was, oh my goodness, I was still 31 or something. And I ended up starting a charter school. It was very successful. I was on the board for the charter school, went back to my engineering career. And then a few years in, the school leader decided to leave because the business part of running a charter school had just become too much. And the board at the time of the charter school asked if I would be willing to step in and lead the charter school just on a short term, temporary basis. I really didn't want to because I don't have a degree in education. And, I was very concerned about that. But I agreed to do it for 5 minutes. And 16 years later, we had three campuses with 3,000 students, and we're one of the top rated schools in the state of Colorado. Very, very proud of that charter school and of all the work that we did together in that amazing place. At some point in there, I got a master's degree in public administration. And in 2018, our local school board and our superintendent of our school district had left, and our local school board asked if I would be willing to step into that role for 5 minutes. Also, I didn't want to do that. My biggest concern was I'm a charter leader. They're going to hate me. um, and but I eventually said yes and did agree to step in for a few minutes, and it ended up being 2 years. So I ran our district as interim superintendent for 2 years. I fell in love with the school district, with all of the amazing schools that are in our school district. I have 92 schools in our school district, and I'm so proud to now be the permanent superintendent for Douglas County School District.
So, all right, let's dig into a little bit of that
Sure.
because you hit, I mean, you hit some hot topics in there just in
Yeah.
going through. So one of the first things you do, and sorry, I'm looking at my screens here because I just switched to a Mac and I can't figure out like all the things yet. Um, but one of the things that comes up a lot is this whole thing of the debate between charter
Sure.
and like public districts, which like I think we can get in the technicals that charters are actually public
They
schools
are.
as well. um so what was that like, at that moment where you're like, hey, my option isn't there, so I want to start my own? Can you talk through like what was the dissatisfaction with what the options were there that even prompted you to want to start?
So in my case, it wasn't dissatisfaction. It was wanting something different. It absolutely wasn't dissatisfaction. We have great schools. In my case, it was very much. I felt very passionate that science, technology, engineering, and math is something that kids should be exposed to when they're in elementary school. My husband was also an engineer, and we both felt really strongly about that.
Okay.
So it wasn't a flaw with our local schools, and charter schools are founded by different people for different reasons. But for us, that was our reason. We wanted a really strong focus on academics, but a strong focus on STEM. So, but you're right. There is always a debate, and between charter schools and neighborhood schools. And I would say a few things. You're right. Charter schools are absolutely public schools, typically authorized, at least in Colorado. Charter schools are authorized by their local school district. Um, so they're really part of the same school district family. They just have more autonomy and their own elected board. So rather than a larger board of education, they have their own elected board that's elected by the parents of the charter school. I'm probably one of the few people who have been sort of on both sides of that equation, right? I've lived life as a charter school leader, and I've seen what that looks like financially in terms of student enrollment, academics, holding on to staff, the laws, all of those things. And now, I sit as a school district superintendent, and I see things, from that more that superintendent and whole system lens. And in my evaluation of having been on both sides of that coin, I think there are plenty of advantages and disadvantages to go around. So, charters have advantages and disadvantages. Neighborhood
Yeah.
schools and districts have advantages and disadvantages. They're all different, but at the end of the day, there are plenty to go around that more or less even the playing field. Here in Douglas County, we have 18 charter schools. And so 25% of our students go to a charter school. And for us, it's really about what parents want for their kids. We want to see every parent have the education they always dreamed of for their children, and have their children in a place where they feel like their student belongs and is getting the education that they need. And so for us, 24% of those choices are a charter school, and 75% of those choices, those parents want their local neighborhood school. And their choice matters. All of their choices matter. So we work really hard to support all of our schools here in Douglas County School District.
And and in a lot of ways, you're right. We can play the pros and the cons a
Yeah.
long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Just to give you some perspective, like my wife and I, we moved from the Midwest. So I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, lived in Ohio for about 20 years, and then we moved to Arizona in 2017.
Okay.
And our perspective is like, whoa, what is going on
Yeah.
here? Like, we go to like a neighborhood park, and you start asking where kids go to
And
school,
it's
and it's like
everywhere.
you get 12 different
Yeah.
answers
Yeah.
in there.
That's
And
probably true
so
here,
really,
more or less.
but I think the difference between Colorado and Arizona, and then professionally, we would do work all over the country. So I've been seeing like how other states work,
Yeah.
and I always say, I'm like, the nice thing about the way the country's set up is you have this like R&D opportunity to look at, hey,
Yeah,
this is how one state's
innovation.
doing it. What are the pros and the cons? What are the things we can learn? And so other states can hopefully learn from it
Yeah.
and take that. I think it's really interesting, and I'd like to hear your take on it. My first reaction is I like it better, the fact that the charters are actually affiliated
With the
with
district.
the district. What's your, when you look at the pros and cons of that side of it?
So yeah, I think it really depends. I will say we're very proud of our system here in Colorado. In fact, our charter school laws in Colorado are consistently ranked number one in the nation as far as high quality charter legislation. So we have a very strong gate in Colorado. So you've got to be a high quality charter school in order to become a charter school in Colorado, and you have to maintain that high quality. So really high standards for all of our schools, but our charter schools definitely have those same high standards. I think it depends on where you're located, but I can speak here for Douglas County School District. Our Board of Education is very partners really well with our charter schools. We as a district partner really well with our charter schools. It turns out we are all slaying the same dragons, right? I mean, we all run into the same challenges. We're all worried about kids. We're losing sleep over the same things. There's just so much more that we have in common in terms of the kids that we're trying to serve than anything else. And so it has been a journey here in Douglas County School District to really get to where we've got this fantastic collaborative partnership. And I do have school leaders sometime ask me, both neighborhood and charter, will ask me, when are we going to stop opening charter schools? And my answer to that is when every parent has the education they always wanted for their kids. And they do right now. We don't have big wait lists on for neighborhood schools or for charter schools. People generally are getting the education that they really want for their kids. And isn't that a great thing?
And that's the premise of this podcast, is that we have a whole bunch of different kind of breaking down the silos. Like
Yeah,
we have a lot of like, school leaders that listen to this and affiliated with some associations that we have the podcast with. We also have ones that are like supporting schools, whether from like architects and design or
sure.
other industry partners in there. And then we have a group that I just always say, like, they're just like the change makers, or they just care about education. So they may not formally be working in the education market, or but they care just as much as, and I always say it's the same thing. It's at the end of the day, we all care about the same thing. We
Right.
want the best opportunity
For
for
kids.
every kid,
Yeah. For every kid. Yep.
for every
Yep.
kid. And and I get the, the dynamics in there, but I do think we're getting to the point in the country, and every state again is at a little different phase of this, where we do have to recognize that public education is not just kind of that traditional neighborhood school that like a lot of us grew up with.
Yeah.
And the sooner we can recognize that, I've been having a lot of discussions of just like that debate of like, to me, like that debate is like, we need to move past that,
Well,
and
we
we need
can't
to
put
just find
Pandora back in the box, right?
correct, yeah. It's very much of, yeah, like I always try to look at things in history, and I feel like there was that moment where there was just the debate on like, is global warming, like, is that real or not? And then there was just like this like almost like lockstep like decision of like, we're not debating it anymore, we're just going to try to find solutions. And maybe that's not the best analogy to put with schools in there, but there is that level of like, we can't, like, we gotta get rid of that divide
Yeah.
if we want to really look at moving forward.
And it's so
um,
much better to
so
work together for the betterment of our
yeah,
kids and for our community. And so I do love the setup that we have, in that way.
yeah, and that's a piece where like my first reaction, where that's a pro, like in Arizona and a lot of other states, it does feel like there's just a lot of like friction
Yeah.
between the two, because they're competing for those students, and the dollars obviously follow in again, depending on the state. Um so I do like when it does all fall under the districts,
Yeah.
because now you talk about like, well, it's for everyone, so
One of
now we're
the
figuring out.
one of the other great advantages that Colorado has is we're an open enrollment state. So even if you remove charter schools from the equation, Students and families in Colorado can open enroll in any school that they would like to, on a space available basis. So even within our district, about 20% of our families choice out of their assigned neighborhood school into another neighborhood school. Um, and that works better for their family for whatever reason. And we honor that too, but it does make the dynamic less about, charter versus neighborhood, and more just you do have to compete a little bit for the students, right? You definitely do. And the result is great for all students because everybody does a really great job. I will tell you, in this school district 10 years ago, if you were to look at the top 10 performing schools in our school district, 10 years ago, 8 of them were charter schools. Today, 2 of them are. And it isn't because our charter schools are not doing well. They stayed the same.
Yeah,
But our
it's
neighborhood schools are killing it. They're killing it. And so that's amazing for every single student.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to move past that
Okay.
conversation and go to. So the other thing that I just love about your story is that you did not come from that traditional pathway
Yeah.
of teacher moving up. There's really only a handful of people, and I've been interviewing people, for 7 years on the show, and there's only a couple that stand out. One, Tom Vander Ark, who is up in Washington State. Um, you talked about like that concern, like how was that received by the staff, by the community, knowing that you did not kind of go through the same path that they went through?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, I do actually have a little bit of teaching experience. I mean, it barely counts, but I was one of the, I think I was the only undergraduate TA at the University of Colorado. So I taught a lot of math classes while I was at university for university students. So I at least, certainly have that experience of, staying up late and grading papers and trying to reach each and every student and make sure that light bulb moment happens. But that being said, yeah, that was a big concern, especially when I started leading the charter school, and I arranged my organization in a way that I wasn't personally evaluating teachers, and that worked out really well. But and then as for leading a school district, by then I had a master's in public administration, and I think that was tremendously helpful. But really, running an organization this size, my school district is almost $1 billion in annual revenue, and we have 7,600 employees and 62,000 students in 92 schools. You have to have a lot of CEO experience to be able to run an organization of this kind of magnitude, from a financial standpoint, from an operational standpoint, as well as having that educational experience. So I think that piece is really important, and that was really helpful for me because when I was in engineering, I was responsible for profit and loss and for a small organization and employees and all of those different things. I had to understand the financial side of things, in addition to the job itself being very data oriented. So I think all of those experiences were incredibly helpful for me as I moved into the education space. So I think that's been really helpful. Honestly, I think another aspect too that's really important for being a superintendent, I think, is that um, ability to have empathy, right? That ability to relate to teachers and families and school leaders. I've certainly stood in the shoes of school leaders for many years. And also your experience as a mom. As a mom, I have 3 children. I have one that has 5 learning disabilities. And so I really have the ability to put myself in the shoes of our parents, in the shoes of our teachers, and certainly of our school leaders. So I think all of those things have been great assets, in looking at this position.
I I'm a huge advocate of opening up the applicant pool when we're looking at superintendents and in particular, because I do agree. I think there's, I guess I'd be curious of what prompted you to feel like you had to go back to get your master's in education.
That's a really good question. I think I did want to feel like I had something that would be more accepted in the education realm. I think that was part of it. Part of it, of course, was my own education, and understanding. helping to understand more about leadership in the nonprofit world and leadership in public administration. So it was a very useful degree to get, and it was very different from my experience receiving my engineering degree. So yeah, I would say what prompted was just wanting to continue to better myself and make sure that I was offering as much as I possibly could to the students and the staff in my care.
Okay. Do you think that that was necessary? Like, do you think you could have gone into the role
So if I'm
and
being brutally honest, no,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't. Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
I felt like I could teach half the classes by the time I went through it. So yeah, I would say no, I didn't feel it was entirely necessary. Although I feel the
Yeah.
experience was, I feel the experience of doing it and going through it was beneficial.
Yeah, and I would answer almost the same way. Like I have a master's in business, like an MBA,
Yeah,
but I don't think I needed to do that to start and own a company.
yeah,
I think there are things that I learned, but I think that there's also a lot of things that I learned outside of that formal education that was probably more valuable in there. So it's
yeah.
not like I would be like, oh, like it was horrible. I didn't get anything from it, but I wasn't. I didn't view it was like necessary.
I
I,
I often say that just the process of starting a charter school way back in 2004 was like an education degree. I had to learn every single aspect of a school, of curriculum, pedagogy, all of the educational assessment, all the educational components, as well as the business side. It was an incredibly valuable experience. And in terms of preparing me to be eventually a superintendent of a large school district, that was an incredibly valuable experience because I had to explore every aspect of a school, including the business side of a school as well as the educational side.
So this is the piece of me because not coming through the education one, but working very closely and knowing a lot of superintendents, school leaders, administrators. Just through my work, it's a touchy one. But I'm just curious of like, do you think there's ways where we could incorporate more people from outside of education into these roles? Because you're right. I mean, you are running $1 billion
Right,
organization.
right.
There are other people that have very similar type of experience, but it may not be in education, but they typically cannot even be considered for those type of roles. From your perspective, like, do you think there would be value, or do you think like that crossover can happen more frequently?
I do think that crossover can happen more frequently. I certainly do, and I think the school leader level is actually a good place for that crossover to happen. I certainly think it can happen. I also think we can do a better job. I think we can do a better job equipping our educators who want to go into a leadership position with more of the business skills. We focus so much on the educational skills, and we don't focus as much on the financial skills, on the what it takes to run an operation of a very large size. In addition to having to know everything that you know about education, I think we can do a much better job equipping and building a pipeline of educators who are starting to be equipped with those business skills. I feel like that could be an entire master's degree of itself.
Yeah. All right. So now you're digging into a topic I didn't think we were going to go into this much detail, but one of the organizations that I'm affiliated with is called Education Leaders Organization, and we say it's the exclusive peer group for school superintendents. But one of the things that we're looking at is I'm curious, coming with my business background and kind of my work with other business leaders. We've already like there are camps where there are like proven operating systems for companies.
Okay.
These are business tools that you can use in literally almost every company that you go to. You can implement these type of operating systems, and yeah, you're going to tweak them a little bit based on the industry. And I'm talking through it with them of like, is there an operating system for a school? Like, are there like these like fundamental type of tools that you could use, and doesn't matter what district you go to, you still have some structure to it?
Yeah,
First reaction from you. Yeah.
I would say often in education we are putting round pegs in square holes when it comes to operating any kind of technology operating system. And in fact, when I started my charter school, again, high tech industry, I programmed half of our systems, right? I created a whole bunch of things, everything from managing our pickup and drop off process to managing enrollment and wait lists and those kinds of things to our website and making content creators for the teachers to be able to post information on the website. So, we definitely made a lot of kind of custom things. Now that I'm in a big district, some of those systems, a lot of those systems do exist. But if you're speaking more conceptually, I think there's a lot to be
Yeah.
said. So maybe we should go make a master's
Yeah,
program.
yeah, exactly, and go through that.
Yeah.
And I know that term
How
operating
can I
system,
help?
especially with your background, it
Yes,
went right to
of
technology, and
course it did.
in some ways there is some technology to it, but it's
You mean
also
a
just like a
blueprint?
component.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of blueprint and be
yeah,
like, okay, this is what and I've been talking to a place like Patel for Kids where they have the portrait of a graduate,
yeah,
but then how do you now make that applicable and get that entirely through your whole organization? And what are the ways that you can measure that, and ways to make sure that you hire and fire and review and reward people based on if they're meeting those requirements? And there's a lot of tools like on the business side that that do that, and say, okay, here's how you do it, because every entrepreneur, every business that starts, they start out and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then we come to this realization, be like, oh, there's other people who have done this before,
yeah,
and there's tools to actually help do that. Yeah, so it's something I'm digging into right now, of like, could there be like an education type of toolbox, so that when school leaders, one, they can implement it, but then it will help them create a pipeline for future leaders,
yeah,
and it doesn't become superintendent comes in, they put all their initiatives, then when the next one comes in, they completely recreate, or almost start over, which I hear is a lot of the frustration
yeah.
that happens when there's leadership
Well, and
changes.
a lot of it, I think, has to be driven by your organization's strategic plan. In terms of where you're going as far as things like initiatives go. I know when I started in my current role, we picked four things to focus on. And I sat with my team and I talked about the four things we were going to focus on. And I was in awe of my amazing team because they aligned an entire school system of 92 schools around those four things, and the results have been unbelievable. And so I think if you in terms of just how to operate, focusing on a realistic number of things is really really important. If you try to be everything to everyone, you're not going to do any of it well. But we focused, literacy was one of our big focuses, and in every subject in every grade across our entire system, we are one of the few districts in the country that in every subject and every grade, we are higher than we were before the pandemic began. And that's something we're very, very proud of.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
that
Yeah,
focus and
and that
alignment is why that is.
Yeah, and that's my guess, is that if it wasn't already there, you created something like that to make sure that you're measuring it, and
Yep,
that it's communicated that
yep.
these are the most important things we're
And
doing
you're
this
you're
year or
putting
this quarter.
professional development around it, and you're talking about it at every meeting, and you're monitoring the data, all of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right, awesome. Yeah, I didn't think we would go that, but when you talked about that, I'm like, oh, that actually really applies.
Have you ever wondered how a simple change in your classroom can revolutionize learning? At K 12, we believe the physical space is key. When we partnered with Gary Community Schools in Indiana, something incredible happened. Their classrooms were outdated and uninspiring. Using our radically student centered approach, we reimagined their spaces. The transformation was nothing short of amazing. Teachers saw immediate results, students came back from winter break excited, more engaged, collaboration increased, and overall performance improved. One student even shared, "We have new furniture, it's like Christmas all over again." On the first day back, local media came in to cover the story, capturing the joy and excitement of students discovering their new learning environments. See how we can transform your school today. Visit kay-twelve.com to learn more about our innovative approach. K-12, because every student deserves an inspiring place to learn. Visit kay-twelve.com today.
talk a little bit about your district and what you're working on, because you have a unique landscape,
Yeah.
just as far as like how big it is
Mhm.
and what's going on there. Do you mind talking a little bit about those changing dynamics?
No, not at all. Actually, I'm really, really proud of our district. So I could brag about our district all day long. I've already mentioned our academic successes, and they are significant. We are really. It's so easy in education to run after the shiny thing in the corner and to forget about the fundamentals. The truth is, AI won't matter if your kids can't read. Won't matter. So we have really done a remarkable job in not taking our eye off of those fundamentals and making sure that those fundamentals are in place. And we continue to work in that regard. For example, one of my goals for this for the next few years is to make sure that 85% of our eighth graders take Algebra 1, high school Algebra 1, by the time they leave eighth grade. They're perfectly capable, but that's something you have to like trace all the way back to kindergarten to figure out what you need to do in order to make sure that every eighth grader can leave Algebra 1 by the time they're in eighth grade. And so things like that are really, really important. And in Douglas County, we are also looking to the future. We have to look to the future in addition to those fundamentals. So if you think about a technology like AI, just to give you an example, we are all in. So we are very much embracing AI. I'm a strong believer that AI won't replace humans, but humans who can leverage AI will replace humans who cannot leverage AI. As a school system leader, that tells me everything I need to know about what I need to set my kids up to do. I don't want my kids to just go adapt to this changing world, right? I want them to lead the change. And so, in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are equipping them with all the tools they need to use AI ethically and appropriately. And we need to leverage AI to help us reach and teach every single student, and the possibilities are limitless. This school year, we have piloted Conmigo. If you're familiar with that at all, it's
Yep.
by Sal Khan Academy. We've piloted Conmigo in 18 of our 92 schools and have seen tremendous success. The ability for a tool to help us reach our kids that have special needs or are multi-language learners, or kids that just need a little extra something or need to be engaged or whatever it might be. That has been a remarkable tool to be able to use. Imagine being able to have a tutor that can tutor any student on a problem in English, but the tutoring can take place in the language of their choice. Absolutely remarkable, remarkable possibilities as far as education in the future, and us being able to level the playing field for each and every child, regardless of their background. So, really excited about all of those possibilities, and we are very much leaning into those things. We're also at the same time looking at the damage that we know that early cell phone use, early device use, and social media is doing to our children, and making sure that we're leaning in that discussion as well, and working with our families and really taking a thoughtful look at device use in our schools and how we can help our children and help our families have more of that play-based childhood, because we know that their brain wiring really needs that play-based background. And so we are leaning in those areas as well, all while never taking our eye off the fundamentals, because our kids have to read, write, and do math, or none of the rest of it's going to matter. And so, we're really trying to kind of keep that eye on the future while not taking our eye off the ball that is literacy, math, and writing.
Yeah, I love to hear that you're piloting
Yeah,
Conmigo. When that all came out, I had my kid. I got one for my kid. It's like subscription. I'm like, just play around with
it's
it. Just tell
amazing.
me what you think. And it is. I mean, it really is. I mean, you talk about being able to get that like one-on-one tutor. Yeah, it's amazing
There
how
actually
it
there
can
was
break it
a
down without giving the answer, of just prompting and
right.
asking the right
And
questions
it's in
to
a
get.
sandbox environment that is safe, where the child's data is not being sold or not being gathered in any way. So you kind of have that security blanket, and the system is not giving the child the answers, right? We're helping them really work through the problem, work through the writing process, whatever it might be. I highly recommend watching. There was an episode of 60 Minutes very recently, I think in the last week, that featured Conmigo, and it's actually tremendous. He does a great job really
I
demonstrating what's possible.
just saw a little thing on social media about that,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm gonna have to watch that clip, and yeah, and along those lines with social media, cell phone use, I feel like it's a hot
it
topic.
is.
Is it coming? Yeah, I know some states are taking it that level,
Yeah.
and then some districts are taking it district level, and some are pushing it to site level. How are things working out in your area
Um,
right now?
right now, I think our state legislature will be discussing it this year. It's certainly a hot topic. There are some states that have implemented bell to bell cell phone bans statewide. I don't know if Colorado is ready to take that much autonomy away from schools and school districts. Here in Douglas County, we try to keep them out of our classrooms as much as we possibly can, but we are also talking about other options and taking other steps because it is a big problem. If you look at the research by Jonathan Haidt or goodness, who's the author of Stolen Focus? I've suddenly lost his name.
Uh,
Um, but truly, the research is very, very, very compelling. It takes us 23 minutes. When you get tapped by your watch and you look and check a text, it takes you 23 minutes to truly get back into the mind flow and focus that you were in before you got that interruption. So there's a lot of reasons outside of social media to really be looking at the device use. It's more than social media, right? It's also that
right.
constant distraction. For any other adults out there who feel like I was fine and now I feel like I have incredible ADD, it isn't. It
Yeah.
isn't just you, right?
I,
It's that our our,
yeah.
our world has changed and we're getting so many notifications and so many things instantly that it is incredibly hard for us to keep our focus on any one thing, and that affects brain development.
Yeah, it's definitely that thing of our
Yeah,
generation, or like of our time, where look back and be like, oh man, remember like everyone used to smoke in the 50s, and then they've
pregnant women
learned,
were all smoking. Yeah,
yeah, because I am convinced. I mean, I think it's affecting our eyesight.
yeah,
Like just
so many things.
attention, so many, so
It's
many
it's
things
funny. I've had
as adults, and then also
I've
kids.
had conversations with some high school kids who say, when I have children someday, they will never receive a cell phone
Well,
because they
that
see they
yeah,
see it. They know it's a problem. We know it's a
yeah.
problem.
I know. I talk to I have three kids like you, and we talk about that. And my oldest is 17, and I'll talk to their friends about that, and it's the same thing. It's like obviously right now Snapchat is like what they're all communicating
Yeah,
in, and
yeah,
I'm like I know there's issues like as a parent you'd be like, oh, things that we don't like about Snapchat, but my biggest issue is the fact that it is constant
right.
notifications.
Yeah,
Like it is like you will look, he'll have like 300 or 400
yeah,
notifications on there. And that's exactly it. It's the attention. It's like never being fully present. Um,
right.
and yeah,
And
to
it's
hear that's at 23 minutes to get back, well, then
it's so important, right? We
they're
have to
never
be
present.
fully present to develop relationships with each other, and that's where our kids, I think, are struggling the most is developing meaningful relationships with each other because their attention is constantly taken away, whether it's
Right.
Snapchat or really anything else.
And
I had one
anything.
teacher who did an experiment with the kids where she had them during the course of a class period, she had them count how many times they got some kind of buzz or click on your phone or
Yeah.
your watch or whatever it might be, and the average was like 23 during a class period.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
nobody can focus
Yeah.
on a lesson, even if it's
And
in your pocket. It's happening. It's I think one of the things that frustrates kids is they look at us and they're like, listen, this is not a kid problem, you're addicted too. And they're
that's
right.
exactly it.
They're
Yep.
absolutely
Yeah,
right.
it
We
is.
all need to have more discipline. Maybe we
It
should
is.
ban adult cell phones bell to bell.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the conversations,
Yeah,
and that's what I wanted to ask you more about is that like there's a lot of podcast series, there's a lot of things that are out talking more about this, this generation of parenting,
right.
um, of how to do that. And you're right, it starts with us because we feel it. I mean, it happens in our house too, where you can see, like whether it's me or my wife, like getting involved in something on the phone, and you just lose that connection when you're at home. But what I'm curious to hear is, like a lot of times like the pediatricians are like the ones like as the kids are younger where like the parents go and say like, what should I do this? And but the schools are also like a really good resource for the parents. Is there anything that's done to start having these discussions?
Yeah.
And I can talk a little bit more about like some of the other things that I think are interesting and I hope happen more. But is there anything that's prompting kind of that discussion with the parents?
Certainly here in Douglas County, we offer parent universities, and I strongly recommend that everyone consider this. We often most of them virtual because then people can listen to them while they're in the car or making dinner or whatever it might be. They're just much more accessible. But we are talking about those kinds of topics, and for any of your listeners, I highly recommend Jonathan Haidt's book, "The Anxious Generation," and Johan Hari wrote "Stolen Focus." Those two books, you have to read those. You have to get your families reading those. You have to get your school leaders and teachers reading those because those two books really summarize the research. One, sort of on the more on the social media side of the house, along with that play-based childhood, and the other really on the focus, the distraction side of the house. Right?
Right.
Those are kind of two different ways to look at and to analyze the same challenge that we are seeing as a society. But I think, communities need to get together and have these conversations. We need to talk about the importance of play-based childhood. You mentioned pediatricians. One of the most fascinating research articles that I can think of is the one on peanut allergies. I don't know if you've read this, but for your listeners, peanut allergies when I was growing up were not prevalent at all. I mean, I
Didn't
think I
exist.
met
Yeah.
one person in my, elementary school ever who had a peanut allergy. And pediatricians started telling parents, just out of an abundance of caution, don't expose your baby to peanuts. Like, don't let them have anything related to peanuts until they're 3 or 4 or whatever it is that they said. And what they found is over time, peanut allergies developed in these children who weren't being exposed to peanuts directly as a result of not being exposed to peanuts. They were developing peanut allergies. And we now live in a society where it's something like 20% of our society or more, of our young people in particular, have peanut allergies. So it was something we inadvertently did to ourselves, right? And so I think the research on the distractions and the algorithms and all those things is very similar. It's something that we've caused a problem in our own brains, and we're going to have to figure out how to reverse that. In the same way, pediatricians have to figure out how to get us out of this peanut allergy place. It's
Yeah.
it's just something. It's a big hairy problem that we need to work on, as a society and as leaders in education. I feel like we should be at the forefront of those solutions.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, I'm going to add one more resource in there for parents. There's a podcast series called Raising Parents, and I mean, they have Jonathan Haidt. They highlight a lot of these things in there. But I do think it's the conversation that needs to happen in our communities right now,
Yeah,
um, because before we even start talking about like what schools and things like that are best for our kids, it's the conversation of saying like, what do we actually want for our
yeah,
kids? Because it's just so different. I feel like that's what to me is why it's so exciting to be involved in education right now is we are in the middle of like a huge like
we are.
transformation
We
revolution
are.
that I think people who are not in this industry they may not recognize
Yeah.
how quickly it's happening.
I agree. This is the absolute best time to be in education. It is incredibly exciting, and the possibilities that are in front of us for us as educators and school system leaders, but really for our kids, are amazing. I believe the next decade we are going to see more wealth creation and more progress than we saw in the last century. It is just amazing. We're seeing it at such a pace, and that pace is going to continue to speed up. And the world that our kids are going to walk into will be incredible. They will cure cancer. I am convinced cancer will be cured in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I have one more
Yeah.
topic, but we're going longer than I thought. But while I have you here, I've learned that your district has a lot of initiatives, and now talking to you, I can totally see where it came from. In ways to make sure that the students are getting opportunities to progress even before they get to college.
Oh, I'm so glad you
Um,
brought that up. That is one of
yeah,
our
and
very big points of pride.
I love that you track that of you're
Yeah,
actually tracking, and correct me if I'm wrong, how many dollars you're saving the parents by getting them college
10
credits
million.
and certificate
10 million.
programs.
It's crazy.
Like it's such a
Yeah.
lost opportunity that I feel like most districts do not think about this and try to do that. Do you just talk
Yeah,
through it?
sure. Well, this was one of my four priorities when I came in, that we put this idea of micro credentialing and pathways for our students. So we have implemented many pathways, over 50, 60 maybe, pathways in Douglas County School District that are really well thought out and will actually lead our kids to a career and or a college opportunity and get them college credits by the time that they graduate. Not just if you take a test, maybe you get a credit, but an actual college transcript. We have partnerships with five major universities and community colleges where they give our kids an actual transcript. It's incredibly exciting, and we have nine comprehensive high schools in Douglas County School District, and all of those high schools had many opportunities in each building. There's no way we can offer everything in every building. So one of the things we did is we aligned the schedules of the nine comprehensive high schools. That was moving a lot of cheese. But now we are absolutely seeing the results of doing that. So now when our students can access any pathway in any building, anything that they want to do. So I'll use my own daughter as an example. She got to go into biotechnology when she started her freshman year and was able to follow that through her high school career. She actually will be graduating in May with a degree from Purdue University in bioengineering, thanks to the amazing education that she received here in Douglas County School District. We have opportunities for kids to go into nursing, where they can leave high school with their CNA, they can go work in a hospital, or they can get a year head start in nursing school. We have opportunities in technology, we have opportunities in the trades, all the trades, everything you can imagine. And all of these kids are accumulating college credit, whether they're in welding or construction or in nursing, cosmetology, anything you can think of. They've got a pathway through high school. And they've got a way to obtain college credits. And it just gives them so much more flexibility because they can take credentials and go directly into the workforce and make an incredible wage. Or they can use those credentials, those college credits, to help them complete college in a
Yeah.
much more expedited and much less expensive fashion. So I think we are really one of the leading districts in the country in this regard. While many districts offer career and technical education opportunities, they're not necessarily stacked as a pathway with college credit and micro credentialing. So I do believe that that is very much what our kids need in going into the future. A lot of parents are starting to question the return on investment of a traditional university path and really looking at alternative ways for their kids, and kids are looking for alternative ways to get
I think
directly
that's the
into a
key.
career
Yeah.
field. Our kids, thanks to these, they
They're
have
craving
foundation.
it. They are craving it.
Yeah,
Like they want to do real things. Like they
like
want to
right
solve
now.
real problems. They want to
Yeah,
learn right now.
yeah, they
So
do.
I love that you're doing it. If there is like one thing that if a school leader hears this and can take away to me, I feel like look into it, like find ways to do this
Yeah,
because I mean, I'm watching with my kids. They are just like losing interest as they move along and they just are so anxious, like they just want to jump in and like do
and get
real
in there.
things.
And it's great also because high school is a really good time to figure out what you don't want to do,
Right.
rather than going
Exactly.
into college and then changing majors 2 years in,
Correct.
and having
Correct.
the expense that comes along with those wasted credits from continually
Yeah.
changing your majors. We have one of the programs I'm really proud of is we have a future teacher program, future educator pathway,
Yes.
and our students have courses that stack over their 4 years to take that. We deploy our kids into internships throughout our own schools, and just talking to them has been so amazing. I'll hear a kiddo tell me, gosh, I really thought I wanted to teach elementary students, and then I was deployed to the local elementary school, and I realized that high school is much more my style. But
Yeah.
what a great
Yeah.
time to learn those kinds of,
What a great time to
yeah,
learn, and then it's
what a great
there's
time.
just like
We also
it's
have,
just one of those like
it
win-win-win scenarios.
is,
Like
it
there is
is.
no
And
losers
I didn't
when
mention, but we have so, in addition to our higher education partners, we have so many university partners. So we're also able to deploy our students into internships and apprenticeships, again, while they're still in high school. If you look at the statistics of today's kids, it's actually very, very fascinating. The percentage of seniors who walk across the stage that have a driver's license is has fallen below 50%. I mean, when I was growing up, I was standing outside the DMV on my birthday.
yeah,
I
like
think
the
most of
second
us
you turn
were, right?
16, right?
And so if you think about all the experiences that you got as a result of driving a car by yourself, our kids are missing out on those experiences. And one of the statistics is around a part-time job. Um, when we were growing up, it was like 85% of us had a part-time job by the time we were a senior. And today's number is closer to about 43 or 40 something percent. And again, those experiences are so important. So now as a school system, we need to look at ways that we can help provide some of those experiences, that they're not necessarily receiving organically like we did when we were growing up. So because those are all really important. I mean, your first job, my goodness, you had to learn how to show up and
Yeah,
be on time. You had to learn how to suck it up. You had to learn that, maybe you didn't love your boss. Turns out you can't pick your boss. Maybe you even get fired. Everyone should practice getting fired. All of those
yeah,
things, preferably not
that's the
though
time
when
to
you're
do
an
it.
adult, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, all right. I'm so glad you're thinking about that and doing things about it. So, but as we wrap up here, just a reminder to the listeners, hit subscribe wherever you're listening, watching this: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the hub for everything is at the website betterlearningpodcast.com. But we get a lot of suggestions from there. If you want to be a guest, if you want to hear a certain topic, we're also trying out a different format where, Aaron, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. If there was a movie that was school related that you what do you have a favorite movie that's school
A
related?
movie that's school related, Harry Potter. That's a
Okay,
movie.
so Harry Potter is one that's coming up on our list. Somebody had picked that, but we break down the movies and we have a bunch of like a different award categories, and it's just a fun way to talk about a lot of the topics, but also just get into just more entertaining ways to do that. But again, this podcast is all about just trying to break down the silos so that we do give every kid the best opportunities to succeed. So, Aaron, you're doing a great job what you're doing with Douglas County.
Thank
So
you.
keep it up, and appreciate everything that you're doing and for joining us
Thank
today.
you so much for having me.
The views and opinions expressed on the Better Learning Podcast are those of myself as an individual and my guests, and do not necessarily represent the organizations that we work for, the Association for Learning Environments, K-12, Education Leaders Organization, or Second Class Foundation.